Brewster is going to tell you his story when he was your age to where he is now. So please join me in welcoming him for being with us today.
I'm actually going to start before I was your age. If you were to look at my family and predict what kind of life I would have, you would say that this person's going to have a good life. I was born in Vermont in 1986, so for all of you that don't want to do the math, I'm pretty old compared to you, but so my father was a doctor and my mom was a retired registered nurse, and they met while my parents were working at a hospital. My dad was doing his training to become a doctor after he graduated medical school, and they moved up to Vermont, New Hampshire, so he could work there, and they adopted me. So I am adopted. I do have a relationship with my birth mother today, who I've known for about 5 years, but she was too young and just couldn't really take care of me, so they took me, and I'm sure my parents for a while thought that they got more than they bargained for. In fact, my father always jokes about getting a loan from the bank to adopt me and then wondering if he doesn't pay on the loan, did they repossess the thing that he got a loan for, which would have been me. So, but I grew up in a great home. I lived on a farm in Maine. They moved, I was 1 year old, and we had tons of animals, huge animals, cows, bulls, and it's funny because my mom's from Brooklyn, New York, and animals like that did not exist, and she was way out of her element. But I had a great life. My parents taught me morals, values. I never went without anything. I never was without food. I was never without clothing, and they did everything to give me a great life. Moved to Rochester, New Hampshire, which is about 35 minutes from here, and I hadn't been exposed to really anything as far as alcohol, drugs, violence, or anything like that. And then, going to a public school, things like that started to happen. And I was 12 years old. I was in 7th grade at the time, and I had been bullied for probably, a good year. Really for no reason. I got bullied because I was short. I got bullied because I was adopted. I got bullied because my father was a doctor and everybody thought that we were super rich. I got bullied just because. And I didn't really have many friends in 7th grade, and really what had happened was that we would go and hang out at the Rochester Public Library, and I would skateboard there, and I started hanging out with kids that were older than me. They were 17, 18 years old, and I was offered to try smoking dope, smoking weed. And I remember the first time doing it. I remember being in a treehouse. I remember running through the woods and thinking that it was like the greatest thing ever. And people would tell you like, oh, you don't get high the first time, but that's not true. You do. And I thought it was the greatest thing because it really released me from all of the things that I didn't want to think about or didn't want to experience. And that was, bitterness inside. That was loneliness. That was anger, rage. And I found the one thing that connected me to, feeling liked. And so I started hanging out with these kids pretty much every day after school. And shortly after that, we, started to drink on the weekends. And by the time I was 13 years old, 14 years old, I was smoking cigarettes every day. And I graduated from junior high into high school, and everything changed for me. I was not getting bullied. I had lots of friends. I played hockey. I played football. I was a good enough student to keep everybody off my back. I got decent enough grades with minimal effort, and things were going really well. I had a girlfriend. I got my license when I was 16, but at the same time, I was still living sort of a double life. Friends smoked a joint. I wanted to smoke 20. If we took one shot, I wanted to take as many, as I could before I would pass out and wake up the next day. And I just really had no filter for saying no, or what things were dangerous, or what things could do for me at the current time and the future. And so, when I was 15 years old, I had a friend who, mind you, this is in 2000, before a lot of you were even born, but the stigma around opiates and heroin and addiction that it is today wasn't like it was when I was your age. Nobody mentioned heroin, nobody mentioned Oxycontin or Percocet or anything like that. And I had a friend whose father was terminally ill from cancer, and he was prescribed Oxycontin pills. And he called me up one day and said, "Hey, do you want to try one of these?" And I had no idea what it was, and I said, "Sure." And I am lucky that I made it through that night, because I did way too much the first time, and I was sick, and I said, "Oh, I'll never do that again," and it really wasn't anything that I liked doing. But what I didn't realize is that throughout my high school career, I was doing lower grade opiates, Percocets all the time, from surgeries, from friends that had surgeries, from people that had wisdom teeth done. Sometimes I would find them from things that my parents went through, and I would take them from their medicine cabinet, and I was portraying the behavior of someone who was going to be a drug addict later in life, or at the current time, because I had to have a substance in me every day. And it started to affect my relationships with my family and my friends. And there just wasn't escaping myself, even when I was under the influence of things. And on the outside, it looked like everything was great, and I was a happy kid. And when I was a junior in high school, I got in trouble for being stoned at a school dance, allegedly, and they suspended me for a week and docked me 10 points on every grade for that for that quarter, which gave me like 5 D's and an F, I think, which was not good. My parents were not happy about it, and again, that affected decisions that I tried to make in my future. I had to write that on college applications. I had to write that on disciplinary sections on applications for other schools after that, and it was just a blemish on my record. And I didn't really think anything of it. I met with a psychiatrist and explained to him that I was using drugs every day, and he thought it would be a good idea to put me on Adderall, which was an ADD medication, and a potent amphetamine. And I found that you could abuse those, so I started using those and staying up every day. I would stay up for multiple days in a row, and I would go to hockey practice, and I would take 2 pills before that, and then I would just kind of continue throughout that cycle until I would sleep over on the weekend or whenever I really could get some sleep. And I did, and I did that. I graduated high school, and I didn't get into the University of New Hampshire when I tried to apply there, because I had an average GPA and a record of being in trouble for drugs at my school, and so I went to Plymouth State University. And the accountability that I had in high school that prevented me from going off the rails, when you go to college, it's gone. And you have nobody telling you what to do, you have nobody telling you to go to class, you have nobody telling you that you shouldn't do certain things, and I just couldn't handle it there. I drank every day, got introduced to harder drugs, like cocaine and party drugs, and I failed out of Plymouth State University within 3 semesters. I had a 0.05 GPA, which is like an F minus. And I had to tell my parents that I had done all this, and I had to go back home with my tails between my legs. And the trouble was that I still didn't think that I needed a rehab. I still didn't think that I needed help. I just thought that if I could get some sort of momentum going in my life, that everything would change. And so I came home and started seeing a substance abuse counselor, and I enrolled at continuing education at UNH. And I wasn't using any drugs at the time, but I was still drinking with my friends. And again, things were going well. I was doing well in school. I seemed to do well in school when I'm not using substances every day, which makes sense. And I started using drugs again. I ran into an old friend, and we went to go get some coke, and it was his uncle. Now his uncle was older. His uncle was in his 40s, and instead of sniffing coke, his uncle smoked crack. And we went there that night, and I took 1 hit of crack, and within 30 days of that, I was using needles to inject cocaine, and within another month of that, I was a full-blown heroin addict and living on the street. So in 2 months, at the age of 21, 22 years old, I had nothing except a habit that I couldn't control. And my first arrest for narcotics. I do a program, and I did a 30-day program, and by the time I got out, I thought everything was going to be fixed and everything was going to be great, and within 4 days of that, I was back to using drugs again. And I said, well, I guess this is the way that my life is going to go, so I might as well just not try it and ride this wave as long as I can make it. And that's how my 20s continued. I could go into everything that happened year to year, but it's all the same. I overdosed, I got arrested, I went to jail, I got out, I got a job, overdosed, went to jail, and it was the same three things all the time. It was either I was in jail, I was getting high, or I was detoxing. Those were the only three ways that I lived my life. I tried medically assisted treatment, I tried methadone, I tried Suboxone, but I was using other drugs while I was using those because I thought, hey, wow, this is great. I don't have to be physically dependent on heroin, but I can do other drugs and still have a good time. And that just became the way that I lived my life. And it's interesting because nobody really talks to you about what the potential is for abuse the earlier and earlier you start to use drugs and alcohol. And science and research tells us that if you use drugs and alcohol at an early age, at the age of 12, 13, 11, 10, you have an astronomically higher risk of developing an addiction problem later in life. It doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter what kind of genetic makeup you have, it doesn't matter who your parents are, it's just a fact. And it's because we're immature. Your brain doesn't start developing until your mid to late 20s. And there's a crucial time in between 11 and your early 20s where you make connections and you receive certain effects from drugs and alcohol that initiates certain behaviors to fill those likes. Because everybody may think that drugs and alcohol are awful and terrible, and there's other people that think that drugs and alcohol are a good time, and drugs and alcohol both are designed to make people feel good, but there's a level of abuse that comes with it if you develop some sort of addiction that will change everything about you, the way that you think, and it did that for me. And so I was 26 years old or 25 years old, and I was homeless in Manchester. I was living on the streets. I had no more money to get a hotel room. I had no more friends that could benefit from anything that I was doing, and I just had enough. And I had plenty of those moments in my life. I had plenty of those times where I was like, yeah, I think I want to get clean, and I would do it, and then I would get back to using. But for some reason this time, I had made a phone call and ended up in a long-term rehab that was 15 months, a long time. It was a year and 3 months. It was the hardest year and 3 months I ever did, but that was in 2013, and I've been there ever since. Thanks. Go back and finish school, since it's something that I've been attempting to do multiple times over and failing along the way. So I went back to school in 2015, and I'll be graduating in May, which is a great thing. The 4 years went by extremely quick. I will be applying to medical schools this year to become a doctor, because originally when I went back to school, I thought I wanted to be a counselor for drugs and alcohol. And something changed along the way, and I just felt that medicine was a field that I could do both. I could treat people, and I could also implement my past history with substance abuse into whatever field of medicine that I wind up into. And I say all this because I'm still feeling the effects of my decisions earlier in life. I wasn't the best critical thinker a few years ago, and it started to resonate with information that I had to learn. I still have to put on my medical school applications that I've been arrested for heroin possession, grand theft, cocaine possession, theft again, and there's probably another one on there that I'm forgetting, but it's hard to keep track sometimes. I also have to put there that I failed out of school. I have to put there that I've had institutional action at college once before. And all of these things, if you don't tell the right story, are going to give admissions committees a really, really, really great reason to not give me a chance. And so I have to live with that. Fortunately, I don't have any felonies, so that's something that is very beneficial because a lot of doors shut. It's not the end-all, but opportunities and things like that just can't happen. So I'm very grateful for that. Most importantly, I'm grateful for the time that I've gotten to spend with my family. My parents have gone through quite a ride over 15 years of addiction, and it's been a blessing to be able to spend that time with them and to sort of enjoy some father-son, mother-son, sister-brother, brother-in-law time to sort of repair the damage that I had done over those years, because I was not the nicest person. So this isn't to tell you what you should and what you shouldn't do. I'm just explaining and telling you a little bit about where I came from and the decisions that I made early in my life, and how there was no foreseeing what would have happened to me. There's no foreseeing what happens to someone when they decide to use substances at an early age. So this is an encouragement to make good decisions. This is an encouragement to talk to people about things. Hopefully everybody has someone in their life that they can kind of confide in and be brutally honest with. And I'm sure the school has great facilitators for that, or that you know someone personally. And if you have questions about certain things, please ask them. And if you'd like to find out the reasons why, then I'm sure you can certainly find the resources for stuff like that. So thank you for letting me speak. And that's it. Did my parents try to stop me from using drugs? Yes, multiple times. Kicking me out and then letting me back in. They tried to cut off phones. They pretty much tried everything that they possibly could to do it. So. How's my relationship with my parents now? I actually moved back home a couple of years ago to save money so I could save money on rent. And it's been a great relationship. We talk all the time, and living under the same roof, I'm able to help them with certain things and watch the dogs and just enjoy some lost time. Little bits here and there. I think the longest that I spent was 6 months. 3 months here, 2 months there, 1 month there, multiple nights, and then they would let me out. But yeah, just over and over and over again over the course of 8 years or so. What was my parents' first reaction when they found out? In high school they were shocked. And then when I came home from college when I was 21 and had to explain to them that instead of marijuana it was cocaine this time, they just kind of nodded their heads and said, well, that explains it, because you failed out after 3 semesters and you just don't look right. I was like 120 pounds when I came home, and I was just not a very healthy looking person. So at least they had some answers. What was my journey like? That's a good question. Well, from 12 to 17, it was what I thought was normal. It seemed normal. It seemed like everybody was doing the same things. And then when I started to sort of deviate from what my friends were doing to doing harder things, I think that's when it started to become something that wasn't recreational and something that was a problem in my life.
Did you ever really think about killing yourself during it, or?
Yeah. Yep. Never tried to act on it, but it was like I'd be driving down the road and I would think about driving a car off of, a cliff or into a rock, or I would try to do what I thought was going to kill me, but at the same time, there was still like a very small part of me that didn't want to die, and thankfully, it never happened.
Do you have any long-term physical illnesses or anything that came from this?
I contracted hepatitis C when I was 20 years old. I got treatment for that. I spent a year on treatment. I contracted it again when I was 25 years old and did treatment again for that. So fortunately, medicine is great these days and I was cured of it. But when I was 21, they told me that I had such bad liver damage at that time that if I didn't get treated for it right away, I'd be dead by 50 years old. So, but other than that, I think I'm okay. I get this question all the time, and part of me wants to say, well, I don't have any regrets because I wouldn't be who I am today if I changed anything. But at the same time, I guess the one thing that I would have changed is how I approached education, how I approached school. I was a very content-minded person. I figured that if I just memorized what I needed to memorize, I could regurgitate it on a test and do well. And it really hindered critical thinking skills. And critical thinking skills don't just translate into education, they translate into life. And I felt like I had a deficiency in making educated decisions and critically analyzing certain scenarios that I was in or decisions that I was about to make because I was so impulsive. I always say go to them first. And give them an option. And just, sometimes people just want someone to tell it to and talk to about. And then, I don't know, I can't tell you to go tell on them. But I would say, I would encourage them to go with you to talk to someone about it. Yeah.
What's like the hardest part about the detox?
Hardest part about the detox. It's the worst feeling in the world. I can't imagine why someone would go through it once and then try to go through it again. I must have detoxed like 15 times. And the worst part about it is your legs get this restless feeling in them and you can't shake it out of your legs. So you're always kicking and you're kicking and sometimes you don't sleep for 20 days, sometimes you don't sleep for 30 days, sometimes you throw up, sometimes your back feels like it's going to break. It's just a horrific experience, but if I had to pick one thing that was the worst, it was the legs.
Start over here. Yep. Right there. Yep.
Why did I keep on doing the drugs if I knew that it wasn't going to end well or it wasn't going to do good? I don't know. Why do I guess if we knew the answer to that question, then we wouldn't have 25 million addicts living in the United States. It's like a compulsion that you can't control. It's amazing to be who I am today and think back to how I was before that. It's like someone else is controlling you. It's an unbelievable phenomenon, really.
If you weren't adopted, would you think that you'd still go through what you went through?
Definitely. My birth mom, I love her to death, but she is high-strung, crazy. She is very critical, and it would have been a very, very odd environment for me to grow up with, especially because I wouldn't have had a father. I love her, but I can only tolerate her in small doses. Right there. The worst sickness, it was opiates. Believe it or not, the methadone that they use to give to people so they don't use heroin or any synthetic drug that's made by a pharmacy company is significantly harder to get off of than regular street-grade heroin, which you really don't find anymore today. And there's some great benefits for medically assisted treatment. It does help people to sort of get away from that compulsive nature because they're going to be going through physical withdrawals. But you need to do the mental aspect of it while you're on that in order to get the best result. You know, counseling and changing behaviors and changing who you're hanging out with and changing the way that you think about things. Why did I do stronger substances than marijuana? It's a great question. I think if you, I know people that have smoked weed and never did anything else, I guess. I mean, maybe tried, you know, some like festival kind of type drugs, mushrooms and hallucinogens and stuff. But I think once you start experiencing chemicals in your body, you sort of lose a sensitivity to saying no to other things. And it was just sort of like, well, if I've done this, then I can do this, then I can do that. I got bored. I got bored with smoking marijuana every day, so I wanted to try other things. How were people around me affected by what I was doing? My best friend Derek, who I went to high school with, we roomed together in college, we joined a fraternity together in college, and we did drugs right alongside of each other. And there was, you know, lines that he wouldn't cross, and when I started to go one way and he started to go another way, our friendship deteriorated, and then I would kind of resurface after trying to clean up, and then we would hang out again, and then I would disappear again. And that was pretty much how I lived my life. People around me didn't want to be around me when I was getting high, and I didn't want to be around them when I was getting high. And I've had plenty of screaming matches and breaking stuff at my parents' house and showing up at my sister's house at 2 in the morning, unannounced, looking for help. And anytime that I was around when I was using it, you just knew that you were going to be in for a show. So. If I was never bullied, do I think that I would have started using drugs? I'm not too sure. You never know why something turns a switch in someone else. And that's why it's dangerous to be exposed to things at a young age. It's why it's dangerous to be a part of bullying, or it's even worse to be a victim of bullying. It's just, you never know. You never know what that switch is going to be, and if someone has a disposition to have it turned off or not, if they're able to do that. 6 years.
So at what point in your use did most of your friends kind of fall off? What was the line that becomes starting?
I was 21. And when I started smoking crack, that was when nobody wanted to be around.
Would you ever do you ever think about going back to doing drugs, or?
Do I ever think about going back to drugs? I used them for 15 years of my life, so there's always memories. Sometimes I'll just be driving and I'll get a memory of using. I don't have many good ones of it, and so I guess part about being in recovery is learning to control those thoughts, and over the course of time, they start to get very, very seldom, and they become quicker in and out of my head than they usually do. But if I stop doing the things that I do today to continue to move forward, there's nothing stopping me from going back either. drew the line? What made me want to stop? I was sitting in a hotel room, and there was people in the room kind of going about what they were doing, and it was like a concussion grenade went off in the room, and everything just kind of froze, and I just sort of saw them, and I saw me, and I saw my paraphernalia in front of me, and I had had enough. And I had been there before, but being in long-term treatment was what gave me enough time to sort of separate myself from that behavior and thought pattern and kind of just keep moving. Did I look for stronger and stronger drugs because I was trying to chase the high? Definitely. Yep. Like I said, I got bored. I got bored with one thing. The transition from cocaine to heroin came because I felt like I was going to have a heart attack 24/7 using that every day. And opiates kind of brought me to like a happy medium. And I thought that I had found the best concoction in the world that was going to keep me healthy for the rest of my life, and it was certainly not. How did my birth mother react to finding out what my life was kind of like? Again, she was pretty critical of it. She was like, "Oh, I can't believe you lived like that. How did that happen?" I didn't really have an answer for it. It was pretty ridiculous. But again, she comes from a completely different world. She, never was exposed to any of that stuff. She was never engaged in any of that stuff. She's very successful. She is very, very wealthy by her own hard work, and I think she lets that go to her head a little bit. She's not very humble, so she just if it's something that she doesn't agree with, it's your fault, and you shouldn't have done it. How did I meet my birth mother? I graduated from the 15-month program, and my sister's also adopted. She's younger, and she had been she met her birth father and birth mother, who were no longer together, but had two families and stuff. And I always thought, wow, that's kind of cool that she sees them. She goes to San Francisco, California to see them every year, and not recently because she's had a couple kids, but I just thought, oh, that'd be nice. And when I tried to look for her, the adoption agency that I got adopted from was no longer in service. So my mom ended up finding her and locating her for me and introducing us.
What is your relationship with the friends that you had before, during high school?
What is my relationship with friends that I had before during high school? Derek and I are still best friends. I go watch the Bruins and the Patriots, and I'm always at his daughter's birthdays, and always at special events, and at the lake house on the weekends during the summer and stuff. We have a really good relationship. He still drinks socially. He doesn't have that X factor, that switch that once it's on doesn't turn off, and that's okay for him. But when I go to social events where we're celebrating certain things, you'll never see me at a bar past 8 o'clock or past, like the dinner that's served. I don't have any place, being there that late. One more question? Yeah. I missed the question. If I had kids, would I react the same way about myself? Like if I was the parent and my kid was like I was? My parents, again, not exposed to a lot of stuff like me, and they did the best they could, I guess. They sort of kind of like hoped that I would grow out of it, and probably gave me a little more rope than they needed to give me, but certainly not going to come home at 14 years old and say that you have allergies when your eyes are all bloodshot, because I'll know exactly what you're talking about. So, thanks. Appreciate it.